everybody? Hope you guys are enjoying your day. Today we're going to be looking at potential tropical storm Gonzalo, which is going to be forming over parts of the western Atlantic over the next couple of days. Now, currently it is still Invest 99L, hasn't formed into a tropical depression yet, but over the next couple of hours, and especially as we get into tomorrow and probably into Thursday, it'll probably become a tropical depression. And then as we get later on, we are most likely going to see a tropical storm develop. Most of the models have that forming, or maybe even a couple of these models do have this forming into a hurricane, and those models that do have it forming into a hurricane have it bringing it all the way up to category 1 and even category 2 or 3 status. So that would be our first named hurricane of the Atlantic hurricane season. So that'll be something definitely very, very interesting, and I will be making multiple videos on the storm as we start to get closer to this really impacting parts of Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, parts of Cuba, and also into Haiti. Once it starts to move closer to there and starts to impact that area, I will definitely be making more videos on that. Now, if you're wondering why I haven't made many videos recently, especially over the past week on the current weather pattern, it's mainly just because, I was uploading my winter forecast and also my winter discussion, which I am going to do a couple more of those as we get closer to the winter, and you can go check that out. That's on my channel. But if you're wondering why I haven't really uploaded on the current pattern, it's because there really wasn't too much going on. The Atlantic was completely quiet until yesterday, and then also the Eastern Pacific, really nothing that was going to impact land. It was just mainly out to sea storms, so nothing really too notable there. And there just really wasn't too much to talk about, except for I could have made a video on the heat wave for the eastern United States. That still, I already made a video on that before, talking about this heat, which I forecasted about 6 or 7 days in advance. But I already had talked about that, so I really didn't want to make another repeat video. So there was really multiple circumstances that came together, and that's why I really didn't upload for the past couple of days. But now I hope to get back on a bit of an upload streak. So here is your current National Weather Service page. We have heat advisories for parts of the Mid-Atlantic and the coastal southeast. We also have some red flag warnings over parts of the southwest and some heat advisories for parts of Oregon and California there. So let's get into your current 5-day graphical outlook from the National Hurricane Center. Now let's look at your first disturbance furthest to the west. We have a 30% chance of development within the next 40 hours, and then or for the next 48 hours, and then within the next 5 days we have a 40% chance. And then we have Invest 99L there in that red region. We have an 80% chance of development within the next 48 hours and the next 5 days there. So a very high chance of development, and it is looking very, very likely that this will develop. And then it's going to start to head further to the west. Now this is their cone for the next 5 days, but then especially as you get into that 6 to 8 day time frame, it's really going to ramp up in intensity. So it's going to start to move closer to the Lesser Antilles, then move south of Puerto Rico and also south of the Dominican Republic, and then move south of Haiti. It's going to mainly stay south of all these regions, and it's going to stay right within this very, very warm patch of warm waters and a lot of heat content within that area. We're going to look at that later on in the video. Now, first, let's go over to the Eastern Pacific and just talk about what's going on here. Let's go from west to east. We have post-tropical depression or post-tropical cyclone 7 there, and that only made it to a tropical depression. We actually have Tropical Storm Douglas out here. That's at about, I would say, 13 degrees north and about 125 degrees west or so. And then we have our disturbance right over here that's south of Mexico in Central America, and we have a 0% chance within the next 48 hours of development, and within the next 5 days we have a 30% chance of development. So nothing really too major there, except for Tropical Storm Douglas could become a hurricane. It is looking likely that this will be our first hurricane of the Eastern Pacific, Central Pacific, or Atlantic hurricane season. So our first hurricane that we've seen pretty much for the region that I cover, from anywhere from the Central Pacific to the Atlantic. So that'll be our first hurricane of the season. If that does develop, we actually had another storm that was Tropical Storm Christina, which looked very likely to become a hurricane, and that was only about a week or two ago. But it actually didn't even make it past tropical storm status. So it is something. It's a little bit tricky, especially as it starts to near Hawaii. It really starts to fall apart. So we'll have to see, and it'll be interesting to track that. So Let's start looking at Tropical Storm Douglas. First, actually look at a infrared loop of this, and this is showing you how cold your cloud tops are. And the colder they are, the higher they're going to rise, which also means the more intense those thunderstorms are. And we are seeing some fairly cold cloud tops, indicating some very, very strong convection. And you kind of see that kind of comma-shaped storm there, and it's a very well-defined storm. The only area that really doesn't have too much convection is that northwestern side, right around here. We have a lack of convection throughout that region, but you do see, you can pretty much tell where your system is. It's right around there as of right now. Now, let's go back to here, and this is your National Hurricane Center cone of uncertainty. And you see they have multiple H's here, and that indicates they are expecting this to be a hurricane all the way until it hits about Saturday morning, and then by Sunday, that's when it's starting to impact parts of Hawaii, especially by about, I would say, about 8 a.m. Local time for 8 a.m. Hawaiian Standard Time by about Sunday. That's when it's going to start to impact that region. So here is your tropical storm force wind speed probabilities, and we have anywhere between a 50 and 90, a 5 and 90% chance of seeing those tropical storm force wind speeds. So very high chance that we're going to see those tropical storm force wind speeds. And then here's your 58 mile per hour wind speed probabilities, and we have about a 40 to 50% chance of that. And then if you look at your hurricane force wind speed probabilities, I think they should be closer to 40 or 50%. And those currently they only have it listed as about a 10 to 20% chance of that happening. So here is your model guidance, and you see all these models have it reaching Hawaii, or at least clipping the big island of Hawaii. Now here is your GEFS tracks, your GFS ensemble models. It's kind of blocked there, but you can kind of tell out where Hawaii is right around here, and most of those models also have it moving throughout that region. And then here's your GEPS storm tracks, and they also have this hitting Hawaii here. Now here is your model intensity guidance for the storm, and you see we have one model bringing it to a category 4, the COTI model. Now that's always the higher end model for the most part, and it's one of the more unreliable models. So I don't really like to trust that model too much, but I like to go where most of these models are, and most of these models are bringing this to a category 1 or a category 2 storm, and a couple of these models you can tell will be on track to bring it to a category 3. So we'll have to see, maybe our first major hurricane of this season, and by the time it hits Hawaii, it'll still only be a tropical storm or a weak hurricane, or a weak category 1. So it won't be anything too bad. Now, here is your current 90L invest, and this has actually weakened, and I don't believe it's an invest anymore, or there still might be an invest, but it's not marked on the National Hurricane Center's page. Either way, by the last update, it was just east of about the southern coastal areas of Texas there. Now, if we look at your GEPS tracks, most of them, again, hitting it close to Houston there, and these are your, I believe, your Canadian ensemble models. Now, here's your intensity guidance, and most of these models have it not even reaching tropical storm force wind speeds, but we have one model that's a little bit over aggressive, and it's bringing us to a category 1 storm. I really wouldn't, I'm not forecasting that. I would say it's probably not even going to become a tropical depression by this point. Potentially could. It's not looking too likely as of right now. Now, here is your current Invest 99L, and here's your current loop of Invest 99L. And you see, it is fairly unorganized right now, but we do have some decent convection, and for once, we actually have convection on both the eastern and the western side of this. So that is something interesting to see. One of the first, or one of the few storms that we saw convection also on the western side. Most of these storms that we've seen develop only have that convection on the eastern side, and that's just because they are weaker. But just the fact that this is kind of surrounded with convection on all sides, that is indicating that you probably have a decent shot of this developing into a decent storm. So here is your current low pressure system. It's at about 9 degrees north and by about 39 degrees west there. Now, if we look at your current model track guidance, it's currently, again, it's a few hundred miles north of Brazil there, and it's going to be moving pretty much straight westward, and that's going to start hitting the Lesser Antilles by about the next 5 days. And then as we start to get to that 6-7 day time frame, that's when it starts to get a little bit more uncertain, and it starts to impact parts of the Caribbean. Caribbean. Now, let's start looking at your GEFS storm tracks, and this is your GFS ensemble models. Now, something that's going to really change this forecast, we have a ridge of high pressure that's sitting right around here currently. Well, currently it's a little bit further to the south. It's going to start to move further north, and if that starts to head over to parts of a little bit further to the west, and it starts to impact these areas along the east coast, you'll actually have this steer the storm further and further to the west, and it'll start to kind of impact parts of the Gulf and the Caribbean. Now, if that high pressure system is a little bit further to the west, like some of these models are showing, you'll actually probably have an east coast impact again, where it's going to probably move up the east coast. We'll have to see about that, and definitely it is something interesting, and that is something that we have to figure out over the next couple of days. Now, here's your Canadian models, and pretty much the same story, although these are a little bit trending a little bit further to the east. Now, here is your current sea surface temperatures, and this is really good to explain why this is really going to just become a very, very strong system. This is our first system, which is looking like it's going to head into the Caribbean, and the Caribbean is well above average for this time of year, about 2 to 3 degrees Celsius above the average, and it also has sea surface temperatures of about 30 degrees Celsius, or I believe that is about 89 degrees Fahrenheit, 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So that is bathwater. That is very, very warm. And that is all throughout this region. And all you need really is to be kind of in this orangish shade. So this is kind of the line between 80 degrees and 80 degrees Fahrenheit and below. So when you get above 80 degrees Fahrenheit, that's generally kind of the benchmark for seeing some sort of hurricane develop. That's what the type of temperatures in sea surface temperatures that you need to develop some sort of hurricane or to sustain a hurricane. And we have that all throughout the Caribbean, and we even have more than you really need. And that benchmark in Celsius is 26 degrees Celsius. So here is your depth of that 26-degree isotherm, and basically that's your how far deep those 80-degree waters go. And the further deep they go, that's actually the more that tropical storm can actually upwell that water, bring it to the surface. So that's the more energy that the storm really has. And you see, this is going down about I would say about 450 feet or so, because this is in meters. So it is going down fairly far with this with these 80-degree temperatures. And if you look at the track of this storm, it is going to be tracking right throughout that region. So we have some decent conditions throughout that region. Now, here is your ocean heat content, and you see we have quite a bit of this, and it's all just been stored up over the past few months, and it's been getting kind of collected throughout parts of the southern Caribbean, and it's going to, as this moves further to the west, it is going to just kind of use all that energy, and if it uses all of it, it'll definitely become a stronger system. You have pretty much all the right ingredients. The only thing that's gonna kind of stop this is if it can get through the Lesser Antilles and it can start to move into the Caribbean. Once it's in the Caribbean, it's pretty much certain that it's going to develop. But if it can make it past the Lesser Antilles and still stay generally formed, by the time it hits the Caribbean, it'll be all good and it'll be able to form into a fairly decent storm. So let's start looking at your models. Actually, let's look at your model intensity guidance first. And you see, we have a couple of these models. I would say half and half of them, bringing them. So half of them bring it to around a tropical storm, maybe just below it. The other half bringing this to a tropical storm, then to a Category 1. And if you kind of follow this trajectory, it would kind of stay somewhere between a Category 2 and a Category 3. So that is something that we have to look at. So you see, the icon model is right here, and we're going to actually look at what the icon model is showing. So this is a view of the North Atlantic, and here is your little area. This is your cyclonic vorticity. This is showing you how kind of where all your energy is, and you see that little blob right there that's north and northeast of Brazil. That's what's really gonna become your sort of system. So it's gonna move throughout the Lesser Antilles. It's gonna stay as a fairly weak storm, and if this were to move throughout, and this model run doesn't go far enough out, this area of convection is right around here. here by this point. And if that were to move further to the west and it would continue throughout the Caribbean, it would stay as a fairly strong system and it would probably develop even more. Now, something that really caught my eyes as I was previewing this model run was this little area right here, which that looks like a hurricane if it were to develop. Now, that is one of those a tropical wave that's just moving off the coast of Africa. But I wanted to look at another model to see if they did also have this same system, because the GFS model and the Icon model have been doing both very, very well with these hurricanes, tracking them very, very far out. And I actually looked at this, and you see the same little area right here. It is a bit weaker on the GFS, but it is still here over parts of the North Atlantic. And as if we look at the same time frame, if we go to 180 hours out or 150 hours out, you still see that same general area of convection there. And that is something that's very, very interesting to look at. That we do have potentially some sort of system, and that would be sometime between about the 26th and the 29th. So it is a bit far out, but something that I just want to point out for you guys. And it is a bit farther out than I usually do it, but it is something that caught my eye. And the fact that we have two models agreeing on it made me a little bit more confident in that happening. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.